her, and I actually went to see this film with my 90-year-old uncle. So the thing about that was like my husband was actually like, you're going to give him a heart attack? How are you going to take him to go and see a horror film and not kill him? But he made it out. I just wanted to let you know my 90-year-old uncle survived, so amen, hallelujah. You should go and see this film too. My name is Sophie Hannah and this is the Cine Chic vlog, which is a vlog all about film, film review and just everything to do with film. So the film I'm talking about this week is Us, which was just released a couple of days ago and just has had a massive media campaign because it's the latest film by Jordan Peele, who also did Get Out, and he wrote, produced and directed the film. So yeah, he did a lot. Now before I review the film, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, to like, to share, comment and follow my journey on social media as I try to watch 100 films in 2019. So my first thoughts on the film, it was good. It was a good film and it just had so many themes, like so many. I don't even think I can cover them all and there's so much that's being said about this film. I actually had to see it twice. Like the first time I saw it I was like, there's too much, like my brain could literally not cope with all of the things it was saying, so I felt like I had to see it a second time in order to do this review. And that's the sign of a good film to me, one that really gets your brain thinking, is saying more than just the hour and a half or the 2 hours that it's on the screen. It's something that you take away with you, and this is definitely this film. In terms of how scary is it, I told my 90-year-old uncle, if he can make it, you can make it too. It's not that gory of a film. There is some blood, but it's not like a close-up zoom of really gory and violent scenes. I think it's no more than you would actually see on TV after 9 o'clock. So if that's the thing that might be putting you off, don't be worried about that. I think this film has really been more geared to bringing enjoyment. One thing that Jordan Peele said is that if you just want to enjoy this film as a horror film, you can. If you want to look for the deeper issues, you can. Like, this really crosses a wide range of people. But let's get on to the plot. So this film, like, I really don't want to give much away. Like, so even Jordan Peele, when he was on the circuit trying to promote this film, he had a really strict policy of not letting journalists talk about the film or the plot, and I really don't want to spoil it for you. This is a film that you really have to experience in it for the first time. There's nothing like experiencing a film for the first time. Trying to work out what's going to happen and jump in and being frightened or being worried or being anxious or falling in love with the character before you kind of see how it ends up. So I really don't want this to be a spoiler review. There's a lot of things that I really can't talk about because it is tied in with the character and the plot and everything. But the basic plot is about a family who are on vacation. They go to their summer home. Now the mother, who's played by Lupita Nyong'o, her name is Adelaide in the film, she has this real sense of something bad's about to happen. Like, you know, when your spirit is just restless and you just feel like everything's not quite right. She really has this feeling where the family are just oblivious to everything that's going on and they're just on holiday to have a good time. One night they see a family of 4 strangers standing at the end of their driveway, lurking, not saying anything, and the family are out for blood, and then the film really begins. So that's as much as I can say without spoiling it for you, which is really nothing because I think that all happens within the first 25 minutes. So yeah, there's still a lot more plot to see and to be discovered. So let me talk about some of the pros of this film. Now Jordan Peele is probably known for his comedy sketches the most, where he plays Barack Obama and things like that in America. And I don't think the majority of people actually knew like how into like horror films he is. So he says himself that he's massively into the horror genre and he wanted to make horror pics. This film is definitely a horror film. I don't really see horror films. I don't mess with horror films. Like, that's probably a step too far. I just feel like some things should just not be discovered, like that whole supernatural witchcraft vibe. I'm not really into it that much. So for me, I usually don't watch horror films. But this one I had to see because after seeing Get Out, which was a horror film, even though some people disagreed with that, hashtag Golden Globes who nominated it for a comedy, but it was also a comment on race and society and the kind of all the different aspects of that. So it really elevated it for me above the general horror, which is for scares. But I'm not a horror fan. I'm not like a huge like die-hard horror person. So horror fans or horror critics might feel like, oh no, there's much more going on. But for me, I feel like it's a lot of jumps and scares and I'm not really into that. And why I think that Jordan Peele is such a pro of this film is because he wrote this film, he produced it, he directed it, which is no easy feat. This was his second film, his sophomore film, as people call it. And usually once you've done a really great film, you usually have a lot riding on you to produce something else that's really great as well. And I don't think he disappointed in this. This is a good film, and I think that he can really build a solid career for himself as a producer and a director if he continues to do what he's doing. Now, I had to look up the horror genre in order to do this review, and one thing it says is that a good horror film actually does talk about wider fears that people have in society, and I really think that Jordan Peele did that. So in terms of fitting into kind of like the horror genre in that essence, he really did it. So a pro for me. Second pro would have to be the tension building throughout the film. I think this is really key in probably like the first 20 minutes where you're really getting to know the characters, really bond with them, and like the first 20 minutes that you spend with them, after that you're like, you want them to survive. You're like, you're fully involved in their story and you really want them to make it out alive. But also there's this really great tension that's built. Like, Adelaide feels like something is going on, but you can kind of feel that. Like the way that the film is shot, like the music, everything is really building. It has this nice tension, this up and down, this up and down. So whereas nothing is happening in the first 15-20 minutes, and as a horror film, you know it's coming. Like, you know there's going to be jumps, you know there's going to be scares. You're really just kind of like on the edge of your seat. Everything that's happening is really building, and I thought that was really wonderfully done in the beginning bit of the film and throughout, but especially in the beginning. The next thing for me would have to be Lupita herself. Now, Lupita is an Oscar winner and she won for 12 Years a Slave some years back, and for me, everything that she's in, she just does her absolute best. I think she's so great at characterization. She's stunningly beautiful in my opinion, and I think she just has that spark. So the thing with all of the actors in this film is that they had to play two roles. So they were playing both themselves normally and also their scary doppelganger. But something that was very good, and I've heard other people pick up on, is that they seem like two very distinct characters even though they're played by one person. Now, that's not easy. I've done a little bit of acting in the past, taken some acting classes, and to be able to show two completely different characters within the same film is not easy. I heard that the actors actually had to do physicality training, which is using your body and your movement to really express yourselves, and they really did that. You never were once confused about which Lupita it was, or which Winston Duke it was, or which child it was. Like, it was very clear who they were. But Lupita, I think she just took it on the next level in this film. Just the way sometimes she spoke through her eyes, the emotion that was coming out of them. Sometimes she's just giving this wide-eyed glance and you feel the fear, you feel how terrified she is, you feel how scared she is, and that's not something that's easily done, and she really draws you in and she really holds this film together with her performance. Also, her doppelganger self, her scary self, Scary Adelaide as I'll probably call her, she has this voice that she uses, and it's low and it's guttural and it's hella scary, and it's just so different from Lupita's normal speaking voice. To be able to have done that, the fear that kind of comes from it. And there was something that Meryl Streep said for The Devil Wears Prada, and she said in making this kind of scary character that all of the people in the office were afraid of, she could have gone really big and loud, but the choice that she decided to make was to actually have her speaking kind of a whisper. Because she was saying for someone to be speaking in a whisper and for people then to be afraid of them is actually much more menacing and much more scary. And I think that's definitely something that Lupita did in this film. Even though the voice has this really raspy, rough sound, it's like this kind of sandpapery sound, it's so low that, oh, there's just something scary about someone not having to raise their voice. Like, just being able to have the power and the resonance to communicate through something low and whispery. I think it just adds to the horror feel of it, and I think Lupita was just wonderful in that and just throughout the film. Also, I really love that this was a black family. You don't really see black families portrayed in mainstream films. With Jordan Peele, I really love that he puts importance, or he puts his black actors front and center. So that was in Get Out with Daniel Kaluuya, and also in this film, but it's actually a full family, a dark-skinned family, which you don't really have, which I loved as well. But also the significance of this is that even though the family were black, that had nothing to do with the plot. Usually when there's a black family who are the main character in the film, then usually their blackness has something to do with their plot. Maybe it's related to race, or the way that they're treated, or the way that they act, or whatever. But in this film, they were just a black family. Just a normal black family who were in a terrible situation, and they could have been a white family, they could have been a Chinese family, Asian family. The whole point was it was just a representation of different people that there are in society. And I really loved that. And I actually went to see this film with my 90-year-old uncle. So the thing about that was like my husband was actually like, you're going to give him a heart attack? How are you going to take him to go and see a horror film and not kill him? But he made it out. I just wanted to let you know my 90-year-old uncle survived. So amen, hallelujah. You should go and see this film too. Even my uncle, when he came out of this film, says, you know, it was really good to see black people in there. He was like, when I was watching films and when I've seen films over the decades, usually they're not black. He was like, it's really encouraging to see that. And I say the same, representation matters. It's so important for society to see themselves in our media, in our films. And to be honest, that is how our world is made up, of different types of people, not just one set of people who all look the same. Not realistic. Another pro in this film would be the music. If you take away the music from a horror film and you just have the shots, it's not nearly as terrifying. But the use of music in this, I think there was some really generic music used. I think it was like a choral singing that was used at the beginning, which I think is reminiscent of other horror films. But just in general, I think the musical choices that were made were just so unique, but they work so well. There's a scene that everyone's kind of talking about where this really iconic rap song is played, and it's just not what you expect. And it adds a sense of humor and levity to a scene that actually has no humor because something not good is happening in it. But the music was done so well, and the person who did the music, I've forgotten the name, but I will put it on the screen and research it when I'm editing this. I've heard that this is the second film that they've ever done music for. So I think the first one was Get Out and this one being the second. But the music is so great in this, and it's kind of a character within itself. It just adds a great dimension. Now, you would have seen in the trailer the song I Got Five on It is played. Now, this is an old school classic rap song, but later on in the film they do like a orchestra version of it. So it's a big band playing the song. You don't hear the words, but you know very clearly what the song is. And I thought that was so powerful. And for the scene that was in, honestly, that was my favorite scene in the film. And I'm not going to tell you what it was, and I really wish I could. So I'm really going to have to talk about this with people in the comments for who's seen it so we can really discuss that scene. But that scene was just so powerful, and the music just worked so beautifully, so perfectly. It was just, yeah, music, very good pro for this film. Also, the cinematography for this film, so the way that it looked on screen, the way that it was shot, the colours that were used, there was so much light and shade used. So much of the film, the characters, their face is partly in light, partly in darkness, which for me really talks about the idea of duplicity. Do we see everything of everybody? Can we understand somebody completely, or is there a part of them that's always hidden from us? That's what really spoke to me about it, and I think that was so great about what Jordan Peele done in this film. Like, it's not just a horror, everything is working together. So the way that it looks, the sound of the film, the way that people are acting, like everything is knitted in to really make this a good film. In terms of the cons, so I think in terms of the cons, I really want to talk about this kind of in comparison to Get Out. Now, this film definitely stands by itself. Even if it wasn't made by Jordan Peele, or if his name wasn't attached to it, it would still be a good film. The reason why I would compare it to Get Out in terms of cons is that I felt like the plot for me wasn't as strong. I felt that what made this film really stand out was the themes that it was linked to and the comment that it was making on society. Seeing it the first time and the second time I was just like, oh, and I saw this, and oh, this explained that more, and this is really saying this and saying that. Like, there's so much packed into it. But if you look at it as a surface level film in terms of just the plot and in terms of what's happening to the family, I didn't think it was as strong as Get Out. I don't think that Us had that same feel for me. Now, it doesn't detract from the film, but I probably would say for me that is probably the major con and the only con that I'd probably mention here. Now, in terms of the themes, now I can't really talk about a lot of themes in this, because for me to really get into the films as I usually do, you'd have to be able to know what really happens throughout the film. Now, the first theme that I saw that really stood out to me was what makes us different to other people in different circumstances. Now, when I say to people in different circumstances, I mean what makes us different to rich people, or to people who have less money than us, or people of a different race, or people who are refugees, people who are just different, who have a different life experience to us. What makes us different? Usually in our society, there are so many things that divide us, and we really talk about these divisions of race and class and upbringing and schooling, but how different are we to people? Or do we have a commonality because we're human? Theme number one. Theme number two would be, how different would our life be if we had had different opportunities? Now, I think this is a really powerful one, and it's kind of linked to the first theme that I talked about as well. But you know, there's this big thing about nature and nurture just in life, and I really think that this film talks about that, is that how different does our environment make us? Would I be the Sophie that I would be right now if I'd had a different environment growing up in? And I don't think I would be. The places that we grow up really shape us into the people who we are, for better or for worse. And as you grow up, you can begin to unpick the upbringing that you've had and really think about the person that you want to be now, and be self-aware to say that I couldn't change my environment growing up, but now that I'm older and I can reflect, I can actually begin to think about who I want to be and become that person. But our upbringing, a lot of it can't be changed. And I think this film really talks about how has our environment and our opportunities shaped us as a person. But a theme that I saw being talked about in this film was, what is the world that we're leaving behind for people? Like, what world are we creating for ourselves and for generations to come? Now, for me, I really thought about climate change. Like, the film doesn't talk about climate change, but for me, it really made me think about climate change. As a country and as a society, the way that we interact with our world has an effect on everybody else. Like, we are all connected, and the way that we might use power in the West has an effect on people in the East or the North or the South or wherever, and we need to be really conscious about what world are we creating for other people to live in. And the last theme that really stood out for me was, can we really understand or judge other people if we have no empathy for the lives that they've lived? Now, I say this because it's so easy to throw judgments around, to talk about how people should have lived their life or the choices that they should have made. Like, I have 100% been guilty of that. And I think this film really made use of that cliche saying, you know, you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And this idea that if you don't really understand where someone is coming from, or you don't really have an empathy in terms of putting yourself in their position, then how are you ever going to be able to understand why they've done what they've done, or why they've made certain life choices, or why their life has turned out the way that it has? And I thought that was a really important thing that the film commented on, and it really spoke to me and about the sort of person that I want to be, in really accepting people but also understanding them. Now, those are just 4 themes that I've picked up in the film, but I think there are so many more. I've actually read and seen some reviews where people are picking out completely different things, and I think that is a great thing about this film. Whereas for me, the plot might not have been as strong in some areas, the themes that it plays on really bring the rating of this film up for me. And in terms of ratings, now you know I rate my films according to burgers because I am a burger lover. I give films a maximum of 5 burgers, so that's the most that a film can get. And for this film, I've really struggled in terms of what rating that I would give it. But I think I would give it 3 3/4 burgers. Now that's like a dodgy rating, but for me, I couldn't fully bring myself to give it 4. This was a good film, it was a solid film. I think it was on its way to being a great film, but it just didn't fully get there for me. But it's a very good film, and you should definitely go out and see it. And I really want to hear your thoughts about it, so please let me know your thoughts down in the comments if you have already seen this film. Now, you know I always like to ask a film question at the end of my vlog, and today's question would be, what was the last scary film or horror film that you have seen? Like, whenever that might have been. I think one of the last scary films I've seen, like literally it's been a long time, is probably Candyman, which I heard Jordan Peele is remaking, and I don't know if I'm gonna see it because that film scares the crap out of me. Till this day, I can't watch that film, and I'm not gonna stand in the mirror and say Candyman's name 5 times because that's where it all goes wrong, people. I don't know if I can see any more after this. Like, all of the trailers in this film are showing like Pet Sematary and this and that, and I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna draw the line at us. I think this is probably as far as I'm going to go. But what has been the last film that you've seen and that has really scared you? Please let me know. So for my next review, which is coming out at Thursday at 7 PM, I'm going to be doing a review of all the films I've seen this month and the films that I think you should be getting ready to see in April. But until that next episode comes out, please like this video, please share it, please subscribe to my channel down there, press the red button, please comment and talk to me. I really want to build a film community, but until the next time, I'll see you soon.